Hello, hello, hello. Welcome for another episode of Author Spotlight. Hey, it's your host with the most, your main man, Darren M. Palmer. Excited to be with you for another episode where I get the pleasure and the honor to go behind the scenes with best-selling authors from around the globe. Today, I got somebody on. You might have heard of this guy before, a young man by the name of Victor Hansen. He was able to co-author a little book that some of you might have seen in your local library, or you might have on your table or whatnot, with far as the chicken noodle soup, the chicken soup for the soul series. So, and he has a new book out that we brought him on today to talk about. Ask the bridge from dreams to your destiny. But I'm not going to hold him up because we will not have enough time, and I want to respect Mark's time. So welcome to Author Spotlight, Victor Hansen.
It's my great pleasure to be here with you. And just, first of all, I love the introduction of a young man, because young is a soul, heart, and soul is the spark that's within everybody. And age is a number, and my goal is to live to be 127 with options for renewal. And I want everyone to write, because the minute somebody learns to write, they become dipper. They become deeper, wiser, and richer, and they have a more meaningful, impactful, fragrantly good life. How's that? I've never said it before, but it smells good, doesn't it? Fragrant.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, Mark, I want you, if you don't mind, let's go deep into it, because I know most of the time when you do an interview, most people get hung up, as they should, for us the success of your, co-author book, for us the series, for us Chicken Soup for the Soul. But I want to dive into Ask, because at the time of this recording, this is the time of the COVID-19 situation. I think that this book, universe, God, no matter what you believe, I think all of us can benefit from what you're sharing in this book. I think that you're releasing it at the right time. So just give us an overview what this book is about, and why did you put this book out at this time?
First of all, my wife and I wrote it together. We love the idea. We traveled through to 80 countries, talked to 7 million people around the world. And what we've discovered is this, Darren, we discovered really good people that are wonderful, likable, personable, some educated, professional. And the difference between those who succeed a little and those who succeed a whole lot is one thing only, and that is the ability to ask. So we wrote everything we could think about asking, because both of us are what we call bold askers, and we'll talk to that. And then what we did is we did the science and the research, and went to Harvard, everywhere else, found out what they said about asking. And then on top of that, we interviewed the 26 biggest, best, boldest, strongest, result-producing askers on the planet that we knew. And then we put this book together, and it came out at exactly the time that COVID's hitting, and a publisher called up and said, hey, wait a second, they're shutting all the bookstores. I know you felt this once before, because in 2008, we went from 19,000 bookstores to 400, what called indies, independents. And so I felt that this is the second time. Now there's only one place you can get books temporarily. Hopefully, God, I hope the bookstores come back, because I'm a book addict and I want everyone to write their book. But like I said to you a second ago, once this opens up, everyone's got to do it. But we wrote Ask because the bridge from your dreams to your destiny, because everyone during this 3-month imposed lockdown that has caused more change in 3 months than in 10 years. I think everyone would agree with that. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Painfully at a lot of levels.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what happens is, asking, our friend Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And what I'm saying is, I think everyone's got to shut off the television, shut off all the negative media, and shut off all the hardship for a while, and say, hey, wait a second, how do we take that adversity and turn it into great advantage? And I even wrote a new book that you get free at my website if you go to markvictorhansen.com, called How to Be Up in Down Times. Isn't that a nice title?
I love that. I love that. I love that. How to be up in down times. And when you talk about that asking, from what I was able to look at for as reviewing the book, is that I think that sometimes I know we think that we need to learn something. I think also we need to unlearn certain things. And I think that you did a brilliant job of sharing that in the book, especially with the part for as the fears and the things that people have going on in their mind. And I think you alluded to it far as when you called it, I think it was the seven
Roadblocks.
one of it was the fears that you had in there. And I want to bring that up out of the 7 things that you were sharing with people need to stop, or the 7 roadblocks to asking. I know fear was one of them. So could you at least speak to that fear part, or any other parts of those roadblocks, the 7 roadblocks to asking?
So every one of us has one or more of the roadblocks to asking. The first one we said was unworthiness, and we do a story about our friend Bob Proctor, who, just because these are authors, let me say that Bob and I own 2 companies together, and I'll just do one little part. He felt totally unworthy, totally crushed. His mom was a single mom. She said, look, it was a depression. He's 85 right now, and said, look, you're not going to make it. You can't have any food. And if you just get along and hang on by your fingernails and survive, it's okay. Now, the first thing you said to me is that you and I are into fundamental abundance. And I taught Bob a long time ago a line. The oldest spiritual line is out of the Upanishads. It says, out of abundance, he or she took abundance, and still abundance remains. Because there's, just like you can't breathe all the air in the room, that's how much abundance there is. And we have $4 trillion in the world economy circulating even during closed down time. So all you got to do is make a little part of it yours, and you're financially well off. And we want you to be rich in every way, not just that. But anyhow, so Bob Proctor was crushed. Then he said, well, I'll just go in the Navy because the teachers told me I wasn't smart enough to learn. So then he goes there and he starts asking himself, can I do something else? So he says, what can I do? And he's a fireman and making $4,000 a year, but owes $6,000. So that's dysfunctional. He looks around the room that all the guys are drinking at night, right? The other firemen, and he looks around and says, God, they're a bunch of losers. This is, it's guilt by association or guilt by appreciation. And if you hang out with people that appreciate themselves and have self-worthfulness and are growing, you grow. The old line, you look at your 5 closest friends and you're becoming like they are, right? I think you've heard that somewhere along the line, I'm sure. And yes. So Bob goes to the richest guys he knows, a guy named Ray, and asks, he's going to ask you how you became healthy, how you became wealthy, how you became romantically in love and all that. And the guy says, you got to read this little book, Think and Grow Rich. So ladies and gentlemen, every time period has a book that turns it around. And we got out of the last depression with Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill wrote the Fireside Chats for FDR and that. And if you haven't read it, a lot of times Bob reads it as basically his business Bible every day. I've read it, I think, 200 times. I certainly own everything Dr. Hill has written and totally love him. Anyhow, so Bob asked this guy, and the guy said, well, basically what we're teaching in our Ask book, the value triangle is you start out, what are you best at? And ask 10 of your friends, what am I best at? And have them write it out. Because once they read it, you'll find out stuff about you didn't know that you could do. And then number 2 is, what would you love to do? And when I was bankrupt and upside down, I wanted to speak. And then people said, you have that in a book. And I did a book. And my income went from $75,000 a year to immediately, I sold 20,000 copies at $10 each, made $200,000 in a blink. And now I was rocking, and I've never gone back. So writing a book is critical. And then the third thing is, what can you get paid substantially at? And the book makes you an authority. It makes you an expert. It gives you mega credibility. It opens up doors. So Bob, when I met him, now we've been best friends 40 plus years, maybe 45, is that we're both speaking for State Farm and taking a percentage of the increase and all that, but he's going to write a book. And some lady comes up to him and at one of our seminars and said, well, you can do it because you're Bob Proctor and you're more Victor Hansen, but I can't do it. Bob said, had not written a book yet, and said, well, could you write 1 minute a day? She says, yeah, of course I could, but I got 3 kids and 2 jobs. You understand? I said, just 1 minute, that's 250 words. If you do that for 250 days, you got an 80,000 word book. I think that's the number. And he said, she didn't take the advice, but I did. And he wrote Born Rich and ended up selling 10 million copies and now he's making hundreds of millions of dollars. So he's a giant business, but a book launches you, it leverages you. And we put that story in here because he says now his wife came up to him the day we were interviewing him, Linda. I've known Linda forever and ever, and she's wonderful, and says, Bob, have you ever thought about being a billionaire? So Bob, who's, very good, starts doing the numbers, said, yeah, we could take our company and go to $1 billion. And it's all thinking, right? That's why Napoleon Hill said, think and grow rich, but you got to add one more thing. Think, take action and grow rich. You got to do the do.
Ooh, man, dropping value bombs, Mark is definitely doing that. I really appreciate that. I want to go back to that do part because I think that's been the gap. And I know that you've experienced this too as well, Mark, far as those who were able to be influenced heavily by The Secret. And so, you got those who are given the negative connotation when they think about The Secret because it's considered for some as the woo woo. But that part, what you just brought up, is the A word, and that's what I'm talking about when I say action. That's what Mark shared. That's what Mark shared with us. The importance of action is going to allow for you to see it manifest as well. Not taking away thinking, but it's more of this. I believe, and let me know if I'm wrong with this, Mark. But it's thinking the right thoughts, internalizing them, becoming emotional, and then also that's going to help far as the trajectory, whether it's good or bad, and that will be totally up to you in the eye of the beholder. But you will take necessary steps. So if you're asking things that are big or substantial, a way to make an impact globally instead of locally, it's a different thought pattern that you take if you just solely focus on just your little block. And then it's another thought process when it comes to thinking that I want to go global with making an impact. I do want to help here. I want to start where I am, in Jerusalem, but then I want to go to the uttermost parts of the world, outermost parts of the world. So if you can talk to us far as how can we start changing these thoughts? Because I know you brought that up in the book for some who are having limited beliefs far as, well, I've never made anything above 15 grand or 25 grand, or my gender, if gender is an issue, or sexual orientation, or I feel limited by my color, that there's no way I can do something. So can we talk about ways that we can debunk some of the myths or the limited thoughts that we've programmed ourselves to think or others have imputed into us, Mark?
Yeah. If that's dinging at my phone is off, so I don't know how I'm dinging. I don't know if you're dinging or
No,
I am.
no, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so I apologize for the dinging, everyone that's listening. I'll assume it's somewhere here in our office. I just don't see what I forgot to shut off. My apologies. Anyhow, so every one of us has those. In 1974, I went bankrupt that fast. I'd been in graduate school with a brilliant guy, Einstein's best student, a guy named Buckminster Fuller. He invented geodesic domes, spherical buildings made out of triangles, and Dymaxion cars that ran on alcohol, ethanol, and methanol. And I was trying to be Bucky, and I built the Wall Street Racket Club. I built botanical gardens, aviaries, but I was building out of PVC, polyvinyl chloride, at exactly the wrong time because we had an oil embargo. I don't know, when were you born? What year were you born?
I was born in 1980.
So this is 6 years before you were born. So
Okay.
I went bankrupt so fast, I had to check a book of the library. How to go bankrupt by yourself. And it was tragic. I was sleeping outside in front of another guy's room, and it was all because I misprogrammed my mind. I was reading the New York Times. I was in New York, and I thought I was a hotshot. All the bad news, it should be they say all the news fit to print. It should be all the bad news fit to print, and as far as I'm concerned. And so luckily I'd sold my way through college and been given an audio tape. Now today they're CDs, and today they're downloads and everything else. But anyhow, I listen to it like this podcast. A lot of people are listening when they're spinning or whatever they're doing, walking, hiking, thinking, sitting in their sofa or watching us. So the point is, I started listening to this one tape, and it said, by Cabot Robert, the guy who started the National Speaker Association, which started here in Arizona where I live now. And it said either the creature circumstance or the creator. I thought, oh my God, I created this bankruptcy, which I did because it was my best, worst experience. The cliche out of the Bible that says what you think was meant for your harm is actually meant for your good. And that's why I say you got to take a disadvantage and adversity and turn into opportunity. Well, so what we ask in the book, is we say, look, there's three parts. Ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. So I asked myself, well, what do I really want to do? Well, I really want to be a speaker that talks to people that care about things that matter, that would make a life-changing difference. So I'm living out in Hicksville, Long Island, New York. I got 3 roommates. And as I said, I'm sleeping in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's room. I go down to breakfast and I say to the guys, hey, look, I know there's a rough question for me to ask, but do any of you know somebody that's not a cotton top, not an old person, not a celebrity, not famous, not a lawyer, not a doctor, but some young guy that's making a money speaking? I'm doing Italian here for some reason. Anyhow, he said, yeah. There's this kid. He's out in Hop Hog, and here's my ticket. You just take my little ticket and tell them you're me, and they won't know. There's 500 people going to see this guy. He'll wow you. He's a few years older than you, but he's young enough to relate to. And I went out and heard this guy, Chip Collins. Oh my God, he just turned my mind around. And I went up to him after 3 hours. He mesmerized the audience. He was like Les Brown, who we were talking about. Just, he's so colorful, so enjoyable, so charismatic, so enthusiastic. I went up and said, I'm Mark Victor Hansen. I would like to buy you lunch, right? You got to give some reciprocal value. He says, I like a free lunch, and nobody else is offering, so I'll take your free lunch. I said, can I ask you every question about speaking? And he said, you can ask me, but he said, one chance you make, and he called me boy, which I thought, that was cute. Anyhow, 1 in 1,000, you're going to make it, boy. And I said, okay, I'll take 1 in 1,000. That's a good odds. This is what I want to do, and it's in my heart and soul. So, and he told me, he said, look, as long as you stay out of real estate, which I own this 5-borough area of New York, 5 boroughs, 5 little areas, you do life insurance. So he said, here's what to do. Well, he said, and I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. So when I get back, and he asked me to give me the right questions. I memorized them. I thought about them all night. Next day I go out and call, and I got the first 10 people, 9 people had said no. The 10th guy, I'm going to this office at 6:30 at night, no secretary, walk up to this, down this long corridor at Metropolitan. Now at that time, Metropolitan Life Insurance was the #1 company in the world. And I get with this guy who's bigger than the table desk I got here. I mean, this boy weighed in at 350 or 400 pounds naked after a shower. I'm telling you, he was substantial. My name's Tony. He says, kid, I like what you're saying. You're going to come here and train. I said, Tony, I didn't tell him that Chip had said, yeah, say, do you want to cut the check or have your secretary cut? I thought it was such a scary line for me. I was going, you know. He said, I'm Tony. I'm #1 in the #1 company. I can cut a check for, back there I was charging $25 a seminar, 4 seminars, $100. Right? This is the first $100 I got for a seminar, so it was really cool. Then he said, kid, I really like you. You know, it's about 8:30 here at night, and I'm sure you ate before you came, right? Yeah, okay. Here's a directory. He says, here's a directory to everybody in Metropolitan. You tell them Big Tony told you to call. All of them will hire you to come in and train. I thought, oh my God, I think I've died. I'm going to heaven. Okay, so the question about asking here is an action, is that I took action. I now had a directory. I knew who to call. I called everybody, and if I was either calling, visiting, or talking, and within 2 weeks I had more talks booked than Chip. Within the first 3 years, I did 1,000 talks a year. Only Tony Robbins and I have ever done that many talks, as far as I know, because I had nothing else to do. I wasn't going to read the paper. I'm listening to tapes when I'm driving around my beat-up old Volkswagen until I made enough money to buy a Chrysler Cordoba with Corinthian leather. I was cooking, baby. Anyhow, but I'd do talks as early as 6 in the morning if they wanted at 10, 2 in the afternoon. Sometimes it was 8:30 at night. I didn't care. I was so excited to race my little car and all over the 5 boroughs in New York and, you know, make money. But then somebody said, hey, you got that story in a book. So I got 14 people to multi-author a book, which I hope you do that in your thing too. I hope you sell those. Because not everybody can write more than 5 or 8 pages at the first time. But remember, the cliche that Bob Schuller says is begun is half done. So if you begin with 8 or 12 pages, then you go. But the first book I did was Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. I sold 20,000 copies from the platform. I made $200,000. I tripled my income. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven again. I'm back, and I'm not going down ever again. This time I'm going to keep writing books, selling seminars. And obviously then Jack and I did Chicken Soup, and took us 3 years and 144 rejections, which I took most of, because Jack is the inside Harvard guy. You know, he's 3rd in his class at Harvard. He'll tell you he's smarter than me, and he is. I just am more aggressive, and I can sell and market, and I'm pretty rejection proof. Let me do one line about that, because you're going to get rejection if you do a book. There's just nothing like it. So Peter Guber, who we invited to do this book because he's our dear friend, who made 50 movies, like he did Rocky and Batman and all those. And then he owns the Golden State Warriors, and he owns most of the Dodgers with Magic Johnson. And he said, look, Mark, you're dyslexic. Now, I'm not dyslexic at all, but he said, you're so dyslexic. When somebody told you no, you thought it meant on.
I love that. I love that. But you were on in your mind because you were asking. And I just want to bring this up, Mark, because you definitely gave us some things to think about. And one thing, a few of the things that I want to just extract out of what you just shared for our audience is the importance of, if you want it bad enough, go for it. But this is not just writing something because it looks cute, or you going to, let's just say, for instance, I'm bring up Bob real quick. You went to Paradigm Shift and you wrote something on a card and you just got it in your pocket, but you're not doing something with it. What you're seeing is a work ethic, an obsessed work ethic. You know, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant with the Mamba mentality. You see it phrased in far as branding from different people. You see the documentary at the time of this recording of Michael Jordan and the mindset that he has. But all those who are great, they're not limited. And I also want to bring up the part that you just brought up as well of being willing to partner, being willing to go and ask and step outside of your comfort zone, because you could have easily just said, well, you know, there's no way that that guy is going to see me who's a speaker. You could have said, no, I'm not going to take the ticket. You know what? I'm busy. I need to get real. Let's get serious. And a lot of you all who are listening to this, you're hearing Mark. This isn't Mark the way that we know him. You know, the guy that you see standing, you know, before, you know, that's on this Zoom call right now that I'm recording with. He hadn't even did a book yet. He didn't have the brand yet. But what he did have, he had the work ethic or whatnot. It was in him to move forward. And each time he thought differently, something else manifested because he was willing to take that action. He was able to attract the right resources, the right mentors that were able to allow for him to shoot and go towards his next destiny, whatnot, be on a trajectory for his greatness. And so speaking of that, when we talk about ask, I do got to get in and share this part, Mark, that you didn't know about this. So you're hearing it first on Author Spotlight, is that all of a sudden I'm working at a warehouse at a distribution center. I started doing the same thing that you're saying, not knowing that you were doing this as well, but I was listening to podcasts similar to this one. I'm listening to stuff and I go and get conversation with millionaires or whatnot. I get a hold of that book. And then it's you and so many others in there, Jim Rohn. You know, it's kind of basically all it was a transcribed book of some of the best thought leaders around or whatnot. And also, I believe it had Robert G. Allen was in it as well. I got this book. And so all of a sudden, I think it was the Osmond fellow or whatnot. I think it's Jason Osmond or whatnot, who was a part of that. Anyway, he was just working a show and came up with the idea, and it helped manifest the book. But all of a sudden I go from there and then I get this book.
Isn't that a wonderful book?
Oh man, this is an amazing book. And so I'm looking at this the same way with Mark, for those who are listening, to show you that this works no matter who you are, is that I'm reading this book, I'm listening to the stuff from conversations from millionaires. And then all of a sudden I move out, start my journey growing, because I'm thinking differently than where I was working. And so it morphed into speaking, just like what you was doing. Then all of a sudden I heard someone say, hey, Darren, I had a mentor say, if someone asked you something 3 times, create a product. I heard people kept saying, well, you know what? I know you got a book, Darren, and you're speaking and teaching on leadership, but I have a story in me. So we created a course. From the course, it morphed into a full-fledged publishing company. Now, all of a sudden, because we've been able to stay in business, people love how we've branded ourselves in the 6 years we've been in business. Now it's morphed into the consulting. So each level, the pay, each level, the connections, it went to another level. So now I'm able to be here on this recording and manifest with my man, Mark Victor Hansen. So who would ever thought a guy in Texas at a warehouse that was listening to this guy and, you know, and reading his books or whatnot that was co-authored. Now, all of a sudden, 6 years later, here I am interviewing a mentor of mine. So that's my ask, to show you that this stuff works, Mark. So I want to thank you for pouring into my life, man, even though you didn't even know it, from a young guy out of Texas, man.
Well, by the way, first, I want to unwrap everything you just said, because I agree with everything you've done. And thank you for getting out of the warehouse, because there's a limit to what you can do when you're in a warehouse. There's probably no limit to what you can do right now, because what you've done is you've opened your mind, You're listening and watching and videotaping and going on YouTube and seeing self-help action stuff, which is what I did. I poured all that into my brain. It became my white hot magnificent obsession to do it. And I want to make everybody rich. And the book you showed, The 1 Minute Millionaire, which is still selling briskly and is rocking. And it turns out, curiously, you know, I got paid the last 2 years to go talk in Vietnam, $75,000 a talk. So starting at $25 to $75,000 is a pretty big change for my wife and I. Anyhow, so it turns out 1 Minute Millionaire is the #1 book sold in Vietnam, right? So we're #1 in a lot of different places. And most people say, well, are you #1 New York Times? Well, it was. But yeah, the point is, and what that book says is that there's a million ways. The first line I wrote was, there's a million ways to make a million. There's one right, easy, acceptable, perfect way for each and every one of us. I mean, looking behind your head, somebody made money on the painting. Somebody made money on the paint. Somebody made money on that arrow. Somebody made a hell of a lot of money doing these Zoom calls that went up. 600 million people are on Zoom calls in the last 3 months, right? And you go, holy cow. I mean, and I don't think, whatever we pay for Zoom, what is it, 20 a month or 50 a month, it's relative to what we can do. Because right now you can, I mean, we've been on Zoom calls in Vietnam and in Ireland and England, everywhere in a day's time. And you go, it's much quicker than flying there, because that takes 17 hours and there's wear and tear on his body. Oh, then the other thing you said, when I lived in Newport Beach, our neighbor was Kobe. What people didn't know about how hard Kobe worked, he was up at 4 a.m. every day, just shooting baskets, everything. I mean, you know, I'm a total fan, and I'm sorry that he had that terrible, tragic, awful accident, which his wife, I just read an article by her that said, you know, that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So she's suing the helicopter company, which is tragic, you know, because he was a wonderful, wonderful human being and very, very talented. And then which Jordan were you talking about? The basketball player, Michael Jordan, or the Mr. Muscles, Michael Jordan, the man in a wonderful movie recently out.
Yeah, talking about Michael Jordan, I think it's the Last Dance or Last Stand or something like this. It's a documentary showing the championship series.
Oh yeah, you're talking about Michael, yeah. Because my little grandson emulates Michael Jordan. He is at 8 years old, he is becoming the Flying Everett, just because he's watched. There's nothing he doesn't know about Michael Jordan. And Grampy, luckily, was always a fan of the Bulls, and until he went elsewhere. And I've got every one of Michael's books, and my grandson comes over and says, anyhow, just the point is, he's addicted. And this morning, I'll just finish that, do the full circle. My wife says, you know, the kids want to go to camp. Camps aren't open here in Arizona yet, but they're going to open up July 2nd. Said Everett and his little brother who's only 6 years old, a twin brother, are you willing, with his sister, are you willing to pay for camp? And I said, heck yeah, I'll pay for basketball camp. Of course, yeah. So, you know, and I don't know, I just know Michael Jordan used to shoot baskets with his dad in the backyard forever and ever.
Exactly.
I know that's way off topic here, but the point is, back to the thing, find out what you love, find out what you're best at, and then find out what you can get paid really substantially for. And Michael Jordan, according to what I read, I did meet him once in the Bahamas, but I don't know him. But he is now one of the first 2 basketball player billionaires ever.
Man, that's amazing.
And he's written good books, by the way. I don't know what's a ghost and what's his stuff, but he claims it's his. Seeing him in interviews, he was exceedingly articulate. Even though his study in school was geography. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
His degree is geography. By the way, this brain of mine is filled with more stuff that I don't ever get to tell anyone.
Oh man, that's amazing. Hey, well, I want to make sure that you tell us, you know, when I look at this, you know, Mark, when it comes to it coming true, I think too, what some people need to keep in mind is that, and I want to be, this is like the law of gravity. Let's just use this as an example. The law of gravity exists no matter where you are on the socioeconomic ladder, no matter what your ethnicity is, no matter what your sexual orientation is, no matter what your marital status is. You know, the law of gravity exists. If I walk off the tallest building in Mark City that he's currently at or whatnot, you'll probably see me on the nightly news as a tragedy. It was an accident or something that happened. They might say it was Corona because I fell off the building, but still, at the end of the day, it was at the end of the day, the law of gravity is going to take effect or whatnot. And so the stuff that's here that Mark is sharing with us, and I want to make sure that you grasp this, no matter what side you're on, no matter what political connections that you have, affiliations that you have to understand that no matter where you are, what he's telling you about asking and the focus that you need to have, these things, you're not limited by nobody. Once you get what Mark is sharing, that's why he has this book. That's why he has, Ask Out, because when you realize that you're not limited by nobody, and I think there's so many people that feel like they're limited, whether it's big government, whether it's big pharma, if the list goes on, whether it's the white man, the black man, the Hispanic man, the Asian man. But if you get this principle, like the law of gravity, this is the same mindset that you need to have when it comes to ask. Am I making sense what I'm sharing with the people, Mark? Do you believe that this is universal?
Totally. And everybody needs to learn how to ask. So here's what we're doing. We're saying, get a copy of the book, and because bookstores aren't open, which, as I said, breaks my heart because I love bookstores. I'm a book addict. And my parents were blue collar, so I understand how it is to come out of blue collar to white collar, as it were, pink collar today. But the point is, get a copy of the book, go to my website and fill out, we want you to join, this is my bold ask, 2 parts, to join the world's biggest book club. It's free. We want to talk to everybody about asking once a month. My wife and I'll be with everybody because we want everyone to master asking. Now, you brought up the number of 15,000 or 25,000. We want everyone to have breakthrough wealth, because if you learn how to ask for a financial destiny, you're going to get it. And we're going to teach you how to do it, because I came out of nowhere. My parents, I made more money as a rock star at 16 than my dad made in a whole year. So I understand, I was making $5 or $6 grand a night when he was doing that in a year or so. And I'm not putting down dad. He obviously provided a roof over my head, good food and basic raw stuff, but he was an immigrant from Denmark with mom, and they didn't have the options that I had and didn't have. One of the things you talked about a minute ago is a mastermind alliance. As I say, 1 and 1 acts the power. If you look at it, it's 11. You put 2 index fingers together, and a mastermind alliance is 2 or more gathered in the spirit of harmony, cause a third no mind. And it doesn't matter if your partner is black or white or Hispanic or yellow. The point is, you get to pull off stuff that you couldn't do. And Jack and I said we would do it, and 144 publishers said, get out of here. And finally, a little publisher, Health Communication, said, well, if you buy at $6 each, if you buy 20,000 copies, we'll help you get distributed. And I said, no. I had the written goals. I wrote the goals. I said, we're going to sell 1.5 million in a year and a half. Came out June 28th, 1993. And a year and a half later, we sold 1.3 million. So we were short 200,000, but that was pretty good. And I said, the next year we'll sell 5 million, and we did. And then we said we'd sell 10 million, and then we did. And then we got to 15 million, and we started getting Guinness Book of Records, and I got 10 honorary doctorates. All kinds of cool stuff happened. And that's why I'm saying, anyone can count the seeds in an apple, is what one guy said, but no one can count the apples in the seed. And where Johnny Appleseed planted all the apples from New York to Illinois, according to the legend and truth, I'm Marky Appleseed. I want to plant seeds that everyone writes a book, because the minute you write a book, you're smarter. The minute you decide you're going to be an author, you're wiser. The minute you can do it. And the best way to do it is get our book Ask and start asking yourself, do I want to be an author? Do I want to be an expert? Do I want to make more money? Do I want to have more romance? Do I want to be able to travel the whole world? Do I want to have more fun, more excitement, more opportunity, more promotion, and make life better for myself and everybody else? Because if you go to New York and go to Andrew Carnegie's house, the first great wealth builder, the richest man of his time, I don't know if you've been to his house at 95th and 5th Avenue. It's owned by the Smithsonian now, but the first line is, the authors are the wealth of the nation. Now remember, back then it was nations. I would change it to, the authors of the wealth of the world. The second line, though, in marble, and there's a guy with a 3rd grade education, said, no man or woman can get rich without enriching all others. Wahoo! See, you say, well, I wrote in that millionaire book, the 1 Minute Millionaire, how many, Bob and I talked about everything, but how many millionaires? I said, let's create 1 million millionaires. And if you create 1 million millionaires, that's $1 trillion. Well, right now, the greatest need is I'm asking everyone to become an entrepreneur, because 50 million Americans don't have a job to go back to, right? The airlines are down 30% in management, 30% in flight attendants, 30% in pilots. They don't have a job to go back to. So there's only one choice: be an entrepreneur, a problem solver that gets paid substantially. And everyone, if they read our Ask book, we teach you how to ask God to get your answer. And I'll just do my example real quick by thought command. You say, God, what is your destiny for me? God, what is your destiny for me? You do that 400 times before you go to sleep. You say, well, how does that work? Well, when Jack and I needed a title for Chicken Soup, we said 400 times in our respective homes. He lived in Santa Barbara. I live in Newport Beach. 400 times. Mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title. And you got to know and trust and believe and visualize that the answer is going to come. And the answer came at 2:30 in the morning. Jack calls me up and said, Chicken Soup. I said, for the soul. And boy, both of us got, I don't know if you get goosebumps for truth and corroboration, but we had it. We said, hot damn, this is going to work. I love it. And the publisher didn't love it because they thought you guys are out to lunch. But what we thought was Chicken Soup. I don't know if in your house it happened, but mom or grandma gave it to you if you were sick to get well.
Yeah,
it's pretty much universal in China and everywhere else in all of Europe. So the point is, we thought America was in hurt. What we discovered is the world's in hurt. My wife and I have discovered is that everybody is absorbing this book, Ask. And way back to your first question about unworthiness, and I did the Bob Proctor story. We did an interview with a billionaire this week that blew my mind. Greg Haig. I've also got him in the book, and we're going to film with him tonight because it's changed his life. But we told the story to all of his agents around America. He owns 72 sold. You're in Texas. I don't know if they're in Texas or not. I don't follow his company. I don't own any of it, so I can't tell you. But anyhow, he sells every house in 72 hours, which he's created a new mental state, and his people are making millions of dollars. Anyhow, so Greg said, I never understood my own lack of self-worth. He said, I'm in 8th grade and I want this beautiful girl next door. I want to take her to the 8th grade prom, and that's my whole life. But at the time he weighed 200 pounds and he was little, and now he's a beanpole, he's skinny and thin because he conquered that by conquering his mind. He said, I was so scared to ask her my dad. I told him I was going to ask. Every night I looked at that phone and it was red and evil and it was too scary and I couldn't dial her. And he said, I never understood it was my self-worth. I lied to my dad and said, yeah, I called her and she says she's going with a football guy. She didn't go and he didn't go, and both of them lost. That's why I give everybody watching or listening or hearing us somehow, Darren and I are giving you full 100% permission to ask, to grow, to fulfill your destiny, because if you're alive, you got a destiny, and because the government cloistered us and sequestered us doesn't mean you should stay there. And with your permission, I'd like to talk to that for 1 second more.
Go ahead, please.
So Jack and I are doing Chicken Soup, and the OJ trial happened. And I don't care what side you're on the OJ trial. That's not the point. Every adversity has a seed of equivalent or greater benefit. Napoleon Hill said, Think, Grow Rich. And I said to Jack, Jack, this is our big opportunity. Jack says, what the hell are you talking about? I said, look, they're locked down for 6 months. They can't talk to their wife or their family or their kids for 6 months. They can't watch TV and they can't read. He says, so why is that our opportunity? I said, look, we got this little book, Chicken Soup for the Soul. I'm going to write a letter to Judge Ito, Ito, and ask him to read it. And there's nothing in here about OJ. What if he would let us give one to every one of the 12 jurors? He said, I don't think it's going to work. It's a dumbass idea. I said, I got a lot of dumbass ideas, but it might work. Judge Ito writes back and says, send me 12 books and sign them to all the jurors. Every day the jurors walked in with our books like this. We sold more books than anybody. It was free advertising on every newspaper in America because they were carrying a Chicken Soup book. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that, man.
See, I teach bypass marketing. You got to do stuff nobody else does. I teach all my company. I own the Hansen family companies with my wife, but I teach in all my books, you got to be unique. You got to be transformational. and it's got to be inevitable. Well, it's inevitable that if everyone sees chicken soup and every juror carrying it, and they're interviewing the jurors, well, what do you think about this or what that? I don't know, but boy, I sure like that story that really helped me about chicken soup. And during the break, all they talked about was they went over the chicken soup stores, and we kept sending foods when they came out and they carried them in. It was great.
And you know what, though, Mark, right there on that subject right there, because I mean, great minds think alike. You're talking about synergy. That's what I wanted to dive in to next. And this is great for us to segue into this. Your mindset of being unique, thinking outside of the box. For one, the publishers, they didn't like the title of the book. Okay. The other part was what I loved about you, because I'm a history buff and I was able to study some of this stuff and whatnot that blew me away, was that you all were some of the first ones to even start looking at, you knew that goal that you shared, that you want, how many that you wanted to sell or whatnot, and how much you wanted to make off of it. But then at the same time, you all went, it was unheard of. What, a book at a truck stop? What, a book? The interview that you're doing right now. Okay, so this is not behind the scenes with Barbara Walters or something. This is you with me, and we're doing this interview. So here you are, you've sold millions of books. You know, you still got a bestseller in different countries. Here you are having an interview with a billionaire later on this evening, but you're still taking time out with a guy like me. And so it shows you're, you know, being unorthodox, being unique, and willing to go off the beaten path to be able to make a splash for us what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about that for those who are listening to this, ways that they can benefit from what you're sharing, and also just the mindset of not being boxed in to what everyone else thinks you should do for as marketing.
So first of all, we did sell in truck stops. We became good friends with Famous Dave, the rib factory guy, who was a very wonderful guy. And I said, Dave, look, how much do you make per meal net? And he said, well, we charge $12 and make about $6. I said, look, if you sell our book, it's now $12.95. You make $6 net. You know, the people comes in, Darren comes in, and he hadn't got anyone with him, and say, Darren, just take this book and read it while you're having lunch, if you don't mind, here, or breakfast, whatever you're eating, and see if you like it. Well, in a few minutes, you're going to be crying. And the guy at the next table says, buddy, are you okay? Can I give you a Kleenex? Can I do something? No, man, you got to read this story. And then you become new friends. I get goosebumps telling you, because it rocked the book. It went crazy. And you say, well, what are you doing now for Ask? You, ladies and gentlemen, each of you got to read this book. And I don't care if you get it free at the library, but get a copy. You can get it electronically, you can get it auditory, and, you know, join our book club, you know, which is free to everybody. The point is, we want everyone to have it. So you say, well, what are you doing today? Well, I'll just do one of the unique things we've just done that's gone crazy for us. We have a friend who takes all the waste soap from Procter & Gamble. He turns it into, repackages it, and sells it. So Corona came out, and I just happened to be talking to the guy. His name's Harry Singer. He's in the Midwest, big company, 70,000. He said, everybody wanted disinfectant soap, because now we got to sing happy birthday to you and sing 20 seconds and really wash our hands. And everybody ran out of soap. So I said, Harry, what'd you do? He says, I made a survival kit. I put soap in there, and everybody was out of alcohol, because you need 70% alcohol. So he said, we started making the alcohol outside my 70,000 square foot building. And then I made a bomb-proof thing, because alcohol is explosive. And we start making it inside, because we made so much. I said, Harry, I'm going to do a big ask. He said, you always do a big ask. What the hell's your big ask this time? I said, look, Harry, I will write why somebody ought to have our book Ask if you'll put it in. He was selling 50,000 a day of this survival kit. I said, you just put it in. He said, why they read it? I said, if I send Darren a survival kit, the first thing he's going to do when he opens up, he's going to read it. But he's going to be astounded that it's selling a book. It has nothing to do with soap, has nothing to do with alcohol, has nothing to do with survival, except I said it's self-survival. Well, the books, all you got to do is look online. You'll see our book sales have gone, when you start with Amazon, and we came out April 28th, which is, you know, a few weeks back, not very far. And we've gone from nowhere to yesterday, we're number 21, and we're going to be number 1 bestseller, I predict, the next couple of weeks, because we're doing bypass marketing. If you told me that there was going to be a survival kit, I would have said, I don't think it makes any sense. But I thought, what the hell? I'll ask Harry. And Harry said, yeah, you pay for the paper. I'll insert everything. I don't mind having my people insert it. So just crazy ideas that just, and they work, because if you got the survival kit, would you read whatever came in it? You'd say,
There you go. Absolutely.
And he doesn't have any literature in there. It only has my literature. In other words, I said, Harry, we really got to write something about why they got to wash their hands for 20 minutes, anyhow.
Well, you know what, Mark, I want you to share, if you don't mind, before we get off here, I want to be respectful of your time. Share with the people, how can they get the book? How can they join the book club? And also share with them about how you're helping others become authors as well, or anything else, whether it's social media handles, just what's the best way that they can connect with you and benefit from the services that you're offering so we can be a part of this here at Self-Publishing 30 Days.
Perfect. Well, thank you. First of all, at every level, everyone, look, Amazon is pretty much the only place you can get a book, whether it's going to be in the Kindle or our auditory or, text. Or, forgive me for saying it, but I think we got one of the prettiest covers that exists on any book. In other words, back to everything. I'll talk about that in a second. So just get the book and then go to markvictorhansen.com. And we want to send you an email back inviting you to what we're calling the biggest book club ever, because no one's had a ongoing free book club that's sustainable, because I want everyone to have biceps and triceps when it comes to asking. I don't care if you're black, white, or yellow, or red skin, because I live in the Indian country here in Scottsdale, Arizona. The Navajos are here more before we were, and I've been to all the tribes in that's too long story. Sorry, I sidetracked myself. Number two is that when you go to my website, watch the little video I've got on how to do a book, whether you do, and I'd love you to do it with Darren, or all I want to do is help you write the book. And we've done a course called You Have a Book in You course, and it does 12 things. It does everything from why to write a book. And I do 101 reasons why to write a book, because it's been so good to me. I mean, it's taken me from nowhere to greatness, and I was supposed to be a blue collar worker. I went in elementary and high school. I had to take machine shop. I had to take leather shop. I had to take printing shop, because they thought this boy is not that smart. And I fooled them. Hey, let me hit on that point just for a second. I'm glad you're smiling, because the point, they had besmirchment terms for every race, but being Danish, and my parents were part of the Danish Brotherhood, and I learned Danish before I learned English, is that they would call us dumb Danes. Now, I have never met one that's dumb. I've never met a black person that's dumb. I've found some people who haven't found their genius yet. And what asking does is it wakes up the genius within, because the minute you ask yourself, how am I going to make more money? You start having flashes of illumination, revelation, insight, understanding, and breakthroughs. I mean, it's there. That's why Acres of Diamond was written by Russell Conwell, because you got acres of diamonds and you're waiting to come out. So we did that. Then we did, how do you write a killer title? Because nobody's going to buy your book unless it's got a title. And it's astounding to me that nobody ever did a title as simple as ask, because everyone knows the line, ask and you shall receive. I mean, this is a spiritual give me, right? But somebody had to talk about how to go deep in it. So we love that we got to do that. So we ask you how to do a great title. Like my other book that's free when you go to that website is How to Be Up and Down Times. And I teach you where there's $50 trillion worth of business going to be done in this decade. 50 trillion. Nobody else is teaching that. I'm teaching how we're going to turn trash into cash, every molecule of glass, water, metal, plastics. One guy has figured out how to do it. He spent $300 million. I'm an advisor. He needs 22 million employees right now in Michigan. Not in just the state of Michigan, all over the world, but 22 million American employees. So there's going to be more jobs than ever. And what I'm saying is, back to where we started, our first line to each other was there's fundamental abundance. There's more than enough. We got 8 billion people around the planet. And today, with a smartphone and a computer and a little training, and the training exists available between you and I and a few of us, there's whatever it is you want to do, you got to figure it out. And then I go all the way to the last chapter, brand to command. Because if you're going to build a brand, obviously my name, Mark Victor Hansen, is a brand. Very few people miss taking my phone calls, I must admit. I'm very, very thankful. And I do have a lot of billionaire friends, and I've won a lot of awards and stuff like that, like the Horatio Alger Award, and I'm blissfully thankful. But everyone could be a brand. Chicken Soup is a brand, and we sold $2 billion worth of books. And because I started the licensing, we did $1 billion worth of licensing, and that's not done yet. And that's going to continue forever. And it's made a lot of people millionaires. I mean, a lot. I got more co-authors, I think, in the series than anybody has ever done before. But we show you how everybody does it, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And we show, how do you do bypass marketing? Like, we were on the side of 50 million Diet Coke cases. Coke drinkers we found didn't read books. Too bad. Diet Coke did. So we were on the side with Nora Roberts. That's fiction, of course. She wrote Hidden Riches, and I wrote with my team, Chicken Soup for the Romantic Soul. And we raised so much money. We got 15,000 kids into boys and girls clubs, and we were thanked by Denzel Washington, who I love. And I think he and Morgan Freeman are so dang bright. I could spend an hour telling you. Morgan, his best friend, curiously, is one of my best friends, Willie Nelson. I mean, it's a little hard to believe, huh?
Wow.
Morgan Freeman and I, but it is, right? And it's, you and I are here to have more fun than ever. And I found Morgan to be an enchanting, brilliant guy. I mean, he's done superb movies and been president in 3 of them. So how do you go figure, right?
Yeah, there you go.
From Mississippi.
There you go.
That's a word that we all had to learn in high school. How do you spell it with all those S's, right? Anyhow, so I want everyone to have the fun, the joy, the ecstasy of life. And one of the ways you got to do it, ladies and gentlemen, is look at my videos on you have a book and you watch everything that Darren says about it, and then decide if you will step on your fear. That was the first question he asked. I guess I didn't answer it. And have the courage to step on your fear, because he can't do it and I can't do it for you, but we'll say we give you full permission to get rid of your fear. When Napoleon Hill wrote the Fireside Chats for FDR, confront your fears, make it disappear, right? You have nothing to fear but fear itself. Just metaphorically rip off fear and say, I am totally out of here. Fear is not going to conquer me.
Wow. What a way to share. I mean, make sure that you go. We'll have all this information in the show notes for Mr. Hansen. Just lastly, you brought up the 400 part. Now, would you advise people, and I know they're going to go get the book, but, to say it 400 times. So I want to make sure that we keep people, give them the right compass so they know how to navigate this. Would you say that if it's anything that they're desiring in their life to ask for, whether it's to write a book, whether it's to have a better marriage, a situation with your children, what would it be? The 400 times, ask 400 times before they go to bed, or in the morning, or just during the day? I want to make sure that we give them tangible steps on this 400 times that you brought up.
Boy, am I glad you brought that up. The point is, you're doing it as a thought command when you're going into what's called a hypnagogic state of trance. My wife has a lot of things, but she's a certified clinical hypnotherapist, right? So you go deep into your mind, and what happens is all of us are born rich with 18 billion brain cells. So the law is ask and you'll receive. So if you ask 400 times, it hits the right brain cell, right? And then all of a sudden it'll trigger in the middle of the night. But the goal and the homework assignment then is you've got to have paper next to you, and you've got to write the answer in detail. And if you're lying with your sweetheart, whoever he or she is, maybe you got to go in the bathroom and do it so you don't wake them up. But don't just say, and let me just give you the bad example. The greatest comedian of the last century was Red Skelton, and he and I got to meet one time. I said, I'm a great fan of yours. He said, it's a hot day. I need a fan. I said, thank you. He said the other night he came up in the middle of the night, and he knew he had the best play ever, and he couldn't wait to get up in the morning and see. And it said write play, and he couldn't remember what it said. So you've got to detail whatever it is you say. So when Jack came up with Chicken Soup and For the Soul, both of us wrote it down. We owned it. And you gotta have the courage to say, I'm getting my lazy butt out of bed. I'm gonna write this dang thing down, or I'm gonna type it up, or I'm gonna dictate it into my, my smartphone, whatever phone you got or device, and lock in on it. Because if you ask, how am I gonna? Let me do the example, because you asked about romance. When I was divorced, I said, I want my ideal mate. What would it look like? And I came up with 267 things I needed in my ideal woman. Before I met Crystal, I never told her any of them, but our kids had to get along. We had to have exactly the same values. She had to travel. She had to have her own money, because I don't want somebody marrying me for my wallet. And I don't want anyone else to have that example. I had that example already. That's like a bad example. You learn that bad one once, you say, that was costly. That was expensive, right? And the joke is, why is divorce so expensive? Because it's worth it. But it's painful, ladies and gentlemen. I won't go there, except remember, I'm going to have fun, because your life, the real purpose of life is threefold. First of all, joy. Second of all, if you read the Bible, in the beginning, God created. 28 created you and I in the image and likeness. Therefore, you and I are here to create. But when you're here to create, what are you here to do? You're here to CC, create, and then contribute. All of you have great contribution, and you should be paid substantially for it.
Wow, wow, wow. So if I'm asking to do a book, I need to say 400 times, show I want to do a book, or how am I supposed to publish a book? That would be an example of saying
everything. What is, I always start at the title and I start at the end. I say, where's the market for the book? How big is the market for the book? In other words, everyone says, well, you're immigrants, you should do chicken soup with the immigrants. Well, I said, look, I'd love to, but you can't get to the market. Immigrants don't go in bookstores. My dad, we didn't have any books in my house. I don't know if your house had books, but he didn't have money. I'm not putting Dad down. He was a great, great man, but loved my brothers and myself totally. I don't have any sisters, but we weren't book rich because he couldn't afford it. That wasn't in the cards, right? Magazines occasionally. But the point I'm making is there's no such thing as immigrants. So everybody keeps coming up to me with books that we ought to do in the Chicken Soup series that aren't doable because there's not a market. Good ideas, but you got to start with the market. Where's a market big enough that you have some sort of access to? And today, thanks to the 800,000 podcasts, one of the books I wrote with Jay Abraham, the world's greatest marketers, Grow Rich in Your Niche. There's little niches that you can get into and you jump from niche to niche to niche, but you start with the market and make sure, like How to Be Up and Down Times is like, it was so easy for me to do the book because first of all, I believe in it and everyone gets it free here. If you go to Amazon, you got to pay $4 for it. We did it as a little book fast with the world's biggest chicken lady, Mitzi Perdue, right? Does 22 million chickens a week. So she's sort of substantial. She's 84. I've never met her except by telephone. We just wrote it by telephone. It was great. Just because we said somebody's got to write us out of the dew that we're in. I mean,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so you start at the end and then you come up, so you start with the title and then you put the book together. Market, title, book, and then content.
Okay.
In my immerse. And each time you do the same 400 questions, once I know where the market is, it is my market. Every one of you's got a market different from me, and every one of you needs to write to your market because you're going to have readers that Darren and I couldn't get to under any circumstance. It has nothing to do with color, any crap, or politics. It has to do with you have a market that we don't have, and that's fine. And it's good, it's honest, it's ethical.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I want to thank you. And for those who are listening and you say, hey, you know what, I'm just an entrepreneur, because we have plenty of entrepreneurs who are listening to this show, or business owners. You might not, we think that you should, but you might not write a book, but it might be something that's, where is my net worth for 250 million? I'm just using that as an example. Just make sure that you ask the questions. You can be utilized, implemented in any area of your life. So just if you're not a book person, if you feel like you're not a book person, but you want to use this in another capacity, you can. But Mark, once again, man, I want to thank you for all that you contributed for so many of us across the globe. It's an honor and pleasure and a dream come true to have you on the show, man. I thank God for you, man, and all that you do. And thank your wife for allowing for us to be able to borrow you for a few moments, man, to be able to do the interview.
She's glad to give me away.
Well, that'll work then. Well, do you have any last words, Mark, before we get out of here?
Look, I want every one of you to fulfill your destiny, whatever it is, just exactly what Darren was saying. But if you're alive, you have a destiny, and the only way I know, honest to God, to get there is you got to master the fine art of asking. And I have a book that will assist you to get from here to there faster, easier, and less painfully than any other way. So it's fast, it's easy to read. Like all my chicken soup books, it's in bite size, so 3 pages or less. So you get in and out, and you go, I got the idea. Like the little thing about 400 times, you go, oh, that's simple. I can do that. You can't do. Then you got to do that, and then you got to do the do. You got to go take the action, which we've talked about for the last hour and 15.
All right, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Mark.
Thank
for those who are listening, remember that this is the year for your new book. Until next time, if you won't change, you normally say be the change, but ask. If you won't change, then ask. That's it. Go get the book. We'll have all the information in the show notes.
Good. Thank you. Bye-bye.